This episode is brought to you by Sacred Rites, which provides support, resources, and networks for religion scholars committed to translating their research to a broader audience. You can find more information about their work at sacred-rites.org. Welcome to Classical Ideas. This is Greg Soden. On this episode, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Jonathan C. Feuer. Jonathan Feuer earned his PhD in Asian Languages and Cultures from UCLA in 2023. His current book project is entitled Buddhist Militarism, Violence, and Religious Freedom, the South Korean Buddhist Military Chaplaincy. His current research interests also include Buddhist modernity, South Korean history, and religion and violence. On this episode, we discuss Buddhist military chaplaincy in detail and discuss what readers can expect from his forthcoming book. You can find his work at jonathancfeuer.com. Please enjoy our conversation. Dr. Jonathan C. Feuer, welcome to Classical Ideas.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm delighted that you're here. You're on the other side of the world, so this is pretty fun for me. To start us off, can you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners out there so they know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Jonathan Feuer. I'm a scholar of Korean religions, particularly modern Korean Buddhism. I got my PhD in Asian languages and cultures from UCLA in 2023. And since then, I've worked as a postdoctoral associate at Yale University, and I'm currently a postdoctoral fellow at University of Hong Kong.
Awesome. And you are currently living in Hong Kong these days?
Yeah, I'm kind of back and forth. So I'm going to be transitioning to a job in Korea next month. So I'm technically still employed at Hong Kong, but I'm in Korea now, kind of getting set up, and I'm going to go back and forth a little bit, but eventually be back in Korea.
I'd love to know a little bit about your journey that kind of led you to where you are now. Can you tell me a little bit about your academic path and some of the major turning points along that journey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think a lot of those kind of things become clear, right? When we look back, a lot of things just kind of happen and coincidentally and so forth. But I think now when I look back, at least earlier in my life, I think growing up in a mixed religious family was really impactful on this path. That my parents were Jewish and Catholic and kind of let me sort of find my own path religiously. And especially when I was a teenager, I was really trying to make kind of an informed decision and learn about Judaism, learn about Catholicism, learn about other religions. And I just wanted to know more. And I found a lot of enjoyment in kind of taking that personal journey. But I also think I kind of lacked a sense of belonging in any religious community too. And I also didn't like when people sort of made checklists for, this is, you have to do this, and that to be Jewish, to be Christian, to be Buddhist, and so forth. And I think I'm still kind of motivated to show how we can't impose our ideas of what, being a religious person is onto someone else, right? It's up to each person. Like I'm trying to, still be on that journey to kind of find their own religious identity. And I was also really lucky to grow up just outside New York City in a really diverse community that exposed me to a lot of different religions, a lot of different ethnicities, and one of those were Korean. And some of my best friends growing up and still are were Korean. And I ended up going there with some friends when I was in college, and I totally fell in love with it. I don't know. Have you ever been to Korea, correct?
Never. No, no. I'm a total Asia newbie. I've never been, but I would
Yeah.
love to.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it's sort of cliche, but I loved it when I was there. The people, the food, the sights, craziness of Seoul. But really, I think the juxtaposition of the old and the new there really stuck out to me that I wanted to know more about. And I wanted to find a way to go back. So I taught English there after I graduated my undergrad. And a lot of the religious interest I had started to come back to me, that I saw Buddhist temples, Confucian shrines, all the Christian churches that are in Seoul around, and saw all this amazing religious diversity that I was so unfamiliar with. And it really just, I could see myself going towards a career in kind of studying it. So I went back to grad school and I kind of picked out Buddhism especially because it was this representation of like an ancient religion trying to remain relevant in a hyper modern society, right? And I wanted to know more about how Buddhists were dealing with, economic changes and political changes and the growth of Christianity and so forth. And especially, I wanted to look at the people and how people's, kind of identity as Buddhists were changing along with Korea.
Excellent. Like, did you have any, what was that like finding that area of expertise when you were doing your PhD program? Um, like, what was that journey like to kind of narrow down some of your most important questions and topics that animate your work?
Yeah, I think having great mentors and advisors was a huge part of it I got kind of matched up with Buddhist study scholars that just sort of pushed me in that direction and gave me some confidence to kind of go down that path and see the potential I had in studying some of these topics. But I think I could kind of take some of that personal journey and that I had and turn it into more scholarly interests, right? And my interest kind of remained like quite simple about, what does it mean to individuals to be part of a religious group, right? What does it mean to someone to be, Buddhist or Christian and so forth? And I found a lot of answers in reading about scholars writing on lived religion, right? This kind of theoretical or methodological approach, that religion can be found more in the choices that people make every day, in the families and communities that they're a part of, rather than in history or in a book or in a sermon. And I think this was really aligned with how I think we should best understand religion and religiosity. And I could kind of put a lot of these methods and topics together and sort of study Buddhism with that always in mind and sort of going to the communities and going to the people themselves.
Wonderful. So I know that you've got a book in the works. Is this the adaptation of your dissertation into an academic monograph?
It is, yes. So it's something I've been working on for the last 6 years or so.
Perfect. Okay, so you graduated in 2023. Book is in the works. The project titles Buddhist Militarism, Violence, and Religious Freedom, the South Korean Buddhist Military Chaplaincy. Quite a title. A lot going on there. Tell me a little bit about the project in general, some of the goals, questions, how you narrowed down onto this topic. Just give me kind of like your introductory pitch to the book.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, the title is admittedly kind of
There's
wordy and
it's
everyone
cool, like I like it, but it's just like
yeah.
there's a lot of really specific stuff going on. So I just want you to unpack it for me.
Yeah, sure, sure. Um, yeah, I think what started this project was a little bit coincidental and just kind of talking to a professor about certain issues in modern Korean Buddhism. And the topic of the Buddhist military chaplaincy in South Korea was brought up, and I was immediately kind of surprised. Buddhism has this non-violent image, and we learn in kind of any introductory class on Buddhism that the first of Buddhism's seminal five precepts or commandments is a commitment to non-harm. Yet we have kind of monastics here in the military, kind of engaging with the inherent violence of that military institution. And I think, I think my kind of surprise at the topic is quite common when I talk about it as well. I don't know, like did that come across to you at all as well when you were looking into my work? Was it somewhat surprising?
Yo, I a little bit, yeah, no, but it's really cool
Yeah.
because I've never talked. That's a blind spot on this show is militarism and violence and Buddhism on this
Mm.
podcast. So this is like filling sort of a gap for me, which is really cool.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, no, I was interested to know if you had anyone else talking about chaplains or anything like that. But it's yeah, so South Korea is quite unique in having a military chaplaincy and a quite big one with about over 100 working right now. The institution has about a 60-year history. Only Thailand has a comparably large Buddhist military chaplaincy, and the US and the UK have them, but they're very, very small, just a few chaplains working there. But anyway, I think I was kind of personally, when I started to do this project, I was actually somewhat disappointed in learning a lot of this stuff. I wanted Buddhism to live up to its image of being very nonviolent, right? In a world that has so much war and maybe some other religions that are a little more open to those things. So I really wanted to know how we got to this point, what the history behind the chaplaincy was. And it started with a challenge to myself to think about Buddhism differently, to think about religion differently. And it also struck me as this perfect example of the disconnect between how we learn about Buddhism or how it's represented in texts and how it actually plays out in real life in all of these kind of diverse ways.
How did you go about finding subjects and people and gathering data for the project?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of like a lot of modern topics, it was kind of first looking at media representations are always a good place to start. I've read a lot of Buddhist newspapers, magazines, kind of, non-religious newspapers and things from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when the chaplaincy was coming about. That started to give me a lot of the context for what was going on and bring out some of the voices that were involved in creating the chaplaincy. And I was also somewhat lucky also in working with the professor back in the US who was a former monastic himself and a former chaplain's assistant in the Korean military. So he introduced me to a former chaplain, and that chaplain introduced me to another, and it kind of snowballed from there. And I started having these great experiences talking to very early, first generation chaplains as well, and trying to document sort of their oral histories alongside some of the other kind of archival and textual materials I was coming up with.
Excellent. Okay, so as you started getting going on the project, tell me about what you were doing on like a day-to-day basis. Like, are you going anywhere? Are you going to archives? Are you traveling? What's going on in your actual approach to the project?
Yeah, so a lot of times it was meeting these chaplains where they are. And I think a lot of chaplains uh, only worked for a short period of time and then went on to do other things within Buddhism and outside of sort of Buddhism institutionally as well. So I found myself at temples, around South Korea, finding chaplains who eventually went on to just be monastics, living in monasteries and so forth, and talking to them. I saw others who were working in monasteries or temples that were not really monks, but were kind of foraying their chaplaincy experience into this kind of leadership position within Korean Buddhism. I met other chaplains who had just become professors or teachers, so I was meeting them at universities and so forth. Meeting some other currently working chaplains at military bases, military dharma halls or kind of military temples as they're called now as well, feeling very out of place in a lot of those places as well. And then also just in libraries where a lot of the things start as well. There's a Dongguk University is the main Buddhist university in Korea. and they pretty much hold all of this archival material about Buddhism. So I was also just many days kind of sitting there, taking pictures, reading text, translating, and trying to find things that were useful.
So what is a day-to-day life of a military chaplain in Korea like? Like, what are they doing as part of their day jobs?
So they're doing a whole wide variety of things. I think they're teaching soldiers about Buddhism. A lot of times soldiers will come in from maybe Buddhist families that really have no idea really what Buddhism is about. They may know this or that, but a lot of their job is to just teach introductory topics on Buddhism to soldiers as well. They have a counseling function too, that, soldiers with, maybe mental health issues, problems adjusting to military life, they'll often meet with them as well. They have weekly services on the weekends, Sunday mornings, kind of following the Christian example. They have kind of Dharma services where they give sermons about, the Buddhist texts. They do meditation sessions with the soldiers as well. And then also they serve the communities around the bases as well. The military temples will be situated kind of right outside the gates of a base, usually. So they can also just be community members that come there as well and have, services from the chaplains too. But then the chaplains also go inside the bases to sometimes do rituals or prayers for certain um, uh, practices, within the military, certain drills, right? And trials, weapons trials. I remember I met one chaplain who, after he met me, was going to kind of pray over a nuclear weapons testing training that they were
Wow.
doing as well. So yeah, they're really doing a lot, and it's always kind of changing as well.
Interesting. Okay, so what are some of your, as the researcher, what were some of your favorite examples of takeaways that stand out to you, like now being removed a little bit from the project and working on the book? What is some of your favorite stuff that you uncovered?
Um, I think it was, back to what I was saying a bit before about this initial consternation about the disconnect between Buddhism and the military, Buddhism and violence, was really not at all the story here about the chaplaincy, and this is what eventually kind of blew up into the main sort of argument, or just what I was trying to find in this book as well was, what were the actual issues or problems, within Korean Buddhism, within the lives of chaplains that are kind of worth talking about, or that really say something more broadly about modern Korean Buddhism, or just about modern Buddhism, more generally, right? I think you asked me this question about, what do chaplains do?
Hmm.
Who are they, right? And from this standpoint now in 2026, I can give you a pretty clear answer. But looking at the history when this was being created in the 60s and 70s, nobody had any idea, right? This was a totally new thing. No other countries really had this going on, or like I mentioned, Thailand had a little bit, but there wasn't much example there, right? So it was actually uncovering a lot of these issues that chaplains were facing, like where do we get money from? What do we wear? Can we get married? Can we eat meat? What is our status within Korean Buddhism here? Well, do other monks respect us? Do we have any power within the community? There were also these bigger kind of political issues about, working in the military brings religion closer to the government as well. And that brings up, its whole nother, set of baggage for religion. So it was really this kind of bumpy road that chaplains were on, trying to figure these things out and what their kind of answers were and what their outlook was through these kind of controversies that I think really told me, and what I hope my book does, a lot about kind of the history and progress of Korean Buddhism.
Very cool. Okay, so you just mentioned the book. I know the book is in progress. What is the status of the project at this time?
So it's kind of finishing being under review with a publisher. I'm getting to the final stages of it soon, and that this next project could take a little while longer, but I'm hoping it should come out in the next couple of years.
Perfect. Okay, so walk us through a preview of the layout for the book. What can interested future readers expect when they open up to that table of contents?
Sure. Yeah, I think I've talked a lot about, emphasizing these lived experiences of chaplains, but I think in my methodology as a scholar, I'm really a historian of religion more so. So, if you're interested in some of those important nodes kind of as a preface to creating the chaplaincy, I really start from there, kind of the history of Buddhism and war and the military in East Asia and in Korea, right? Maybe people who are like a fan of Hong Kong martial arts films or like the Wu-Tang Clan, right? Have
Hmm.
you heard of like Shaolin monks, right?
Yes.
In China or something, right? You have a long history there of kind of militaristic Buddhism. In Japan, you have kind of samurai warriors being influenced by Buddhism, and such is the case in Korea, where you have so-called monk soldiers who fought in wars, who protected fortresses and so forth. So I kind of start with the history there. I move into the Japanese colonial period in Korea. Korea was a Japanese colony for 35 years in the early 20th century. And Buddhism played a really large role in the Japanese Empire, supporting imperial expansion and the military. And Korean Buddhism was absolutely influenced by that, as were they influenced by the US military occupation in South Korea in the 1940s, where South Korea and the Korean Peninsula became heavily militarized. And the first Christian chaplaincy was created with the help of the US military. Um, and then I get into some of these issues I've mentioned about kind of this bumpy road and creating the chaplaincy and this really important event of the Vietnam War for South Korea, where the first Buddhist chaplains were sent to serve alongside hundreds of thousands of Korean soldiers in the Vietnam War, and how they helped to emphasize the Buddhist elements of that war. People might be familiar with the Vietnamese Buddhist role in that war, but there were Korean Buddhists, Thai Buddhists, and so forth also participating there. And the chaplaincy is a really important way to see that conflict. And I also look at closely at the lives of chaplains that I've got to know well and the experiences they've had, the discrimination they often faced from other Buddhists, from Christians in the military as well, and how they tried to kind of shape a certain Buddhism that they believed in, one that was kind of modern and meeting the needs of young people within the military and outside of it as well.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really excited for that project. Whenever the book does come out and you want to do a little more press on it, hit me up and we'll do a new episode and we'll also co-publish it on New Books Network so we can do a two for one. So come back
Sounds
someday,
good.
please. Okay, so let's chat a little bit about sacred rights. You've just been doing this sacred rights public scholarship training. Tell me a little bit about how that has been for you and why public scholarship matters for you as a scholar at this point in your career.
Sure. There are two pillars of scholarship, research and teaching, right? And
Hmm.
truthfully, I really enjoy teaching the most. And maybe you would agree with that. I'm not sure. But I really think public scholarship is an extension of that great passion or interest I have in teaching. I want to show this goal I have, or this main purpose I have of showing that religion is lived. especially when it comes to certain different difficult, ethical decisions like violence we've been talking about. I think there's so much misunderstanding in the world, in the news when it comes to religion and conflict, whether it's Jews and Muslims in the Middle East, extremist Christians in the US, even recently violent Buddhists in Thailand or Sri Lanka. People are quick to try and attribute these violent actions to some doctrine or Bible or Quran or so forth. But religion is so much more than that, right? Than these texts or something that makes a headline, right? It's political, it's social, it's cultural, and it's so diverse from person to person or community to community. So I'm hoping that through public scholarship, I can help people, better understand religious communities, uh, have better communication between religious groups, and hopefully, help foster some more peace in this world.
Yeah. Do you have any projects you're working on that you feel are particularly public facing?
So right now I'm working on an article for Tricycle Magazine,
Sweet.
the Buddhist magazine publication, where I'll be talking about this book project, but really trying to focus in on some of the stories from the chaplains that I met, kind of tracing their lives from their years in the chaplaincy and moving forward, and really highlighting their understanding of, the military, of modern religion and of modern society.
Very cool. I just talked to Julian Butterfield recently, and he was talking about some of the work he was doing in Tricycle as well. So great publication. Everybody look out for that. Um, where can people find you if they want to follow along with the work that you're doing? Follow along in the future and keep up with you.
I have a website, jonathancfeuer.com. I'll be starting a new position here in Korea as a research professor at Korea University. So if anyone is in Korea, and they want to talk about Korean Buddhism or any of these other topics, please, yeah, let me know.
Perfect. Well, Dr. Jonathan C. Feuer, thank you so much for coming on Classical Ideas and chatting with me about your book project, Buddhist Militarism, Violence, and Religious Freedom, the South Korean Buddhist Military Chaplaincy, as well as your life path and your views on public scholarship. It's been a pleasure.
Sure. Thanks. It was great talking to you, Greg.